The wind had a bite to it that night, sharp, clean, and unforgiving. The kind of cold that didn't just sit on your skin. It slipped under your coat, found your bones, and reminded you you didn't belong. The Christmas lights lining the street twinkled like lies. Too pretty, too perfect, too far from the truth. Every window glowed with warmth, families laughing inside, silhouettes moving around trees, wrapped in tinsel and joy. And there I was, parked outside the house I grew up in. A bottle of red wine in one hand, a homemade cranberry tart in the other. I took a breath, the kind you take when you're hoping, praying, this time might be different. This time they'll open the door and say they're glad I came. This time, maybe I won't feel like an outsider in my own family. But even before I stepped out of the car, I felt it, the quiet tension in the air. Like something was waiting for me, and it wasn't peace. I should have known. Some warnings don't come in sirens. Some come in snow and silence, and a gut feeling that whispers, "You shouldn't have come back." But I ignored it. Because sometimes hope can be louder than fear. I stepped out of the car, shoes crunching softly on the snow. The cold wrapped around me like a warning. I still wasn't ready to believe. But I walked up the steps anyway, one foot, then the next. Bottle in one hand, tart in the other, heart wide open. The porch smelled like cedar and cinnamon. Inside, I heard laughter, silverware clinking, music humming from a speaker I used to dance near as a kid. For just a second, I let myself believe I was walking toward love. I knocked twice. Not too loud, not too soft. The way you knock when you're not sure if you're welcome. The door creaked open, and there she was, Amanda, my sister. Her hair curled just right, her dress flawless, her makeup airbrushed to perfection. But her eyes were cold steel. She didn't smile, she didn't say Merry Christmas, she didn't even look surprised. She looked me up and down like I was a stain on her welcome mat, then leaned against the doorframe and said, "We don't want you here. Go ruin someone else's holiday." 7 words. That's all it took. 7 words to burn the last thread I'd been holding on to. 7 words that sliced through every childhood memory, every fragile hope, every silent prayer I whispered in the driveway. Behind her, I saw the dining table, candles flickering, ham steaming, my mother pouring wine, my brother laughing with his head tilted back. But no one looked toward the door. No one turned their head. It was like I didn't exist. I stood there just long enough for my heart to break quietly, completely, without making a sound. Then I nodded, took a step back, and whispered to no one, "Got it." The cold hit harder once I turned away. It clung to my skin like shame. Every step down those icy porch stairs felt heavier than the last, like grief had weight. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't broken, but because I'd learned how to fall apart without making a sound, and I wasn't going to give Amanda the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. Not tonight. I got in my car, shut the door, and just sat, hands on the wheel. Eyes on nothing. The tart sat untouched in the passenger seat. The bottle of wine leaned quietly against the door. They looked just like me, dressed up, hopeful, and completely out of place. I could have driven away and let the silence have the last word. I almost did. But then my phone lit up, buzzing so violently it nearly slid off the console. Dad, calling, again. I hesitated, then picked up. "Samantha!" His voice exploded through the speaker. "Where are you? You need to come back." Now I blinked. "What?" I whispered. "Your sister said you weren't coming. She told us you were spending Christmas with friends, that you turned down the invite." The words hit me like a slap. "I texted Mom 3 days ago," I said, my voice flat, stunned. "I told her I'd be there." "I never saw it," Dad replied, breathless. "I swear, We thought you just didn't want to be with us." I pulled over, stared at the dashboard like it had betrayed me. "She told you I wasn't coming?" I repeated, and then slammed the door in my face when I did. There was silence. Then my father's voice dropped into something unfamiliar, raw panic. "She did what?" That was the moment. That was when something inside me shifted. The sorrow didn't fade. It hardened, solidified into something sharp, something strong. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Not broken, not begging. Just ready. I turned the car around. Not with pie, not with peace. This time, I was bringing the truth. She didn't just close the door on me. Amanda rewrote the whole night before I even showed up. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mix-up. It was a setup crafted with precision, served with charm, executed like she'd done it 100 times before. Because that's who Amanda was. She didn't confront. She curated. She didn't yell. She whispered poison. She didn't burn bridges. She built them just long enough to walk you to the edge and then let you fall. That night, while I was baking cranberry tart and wrapping the wine bottle in a red ribbon, Amanda was in that same house telling my family I wouldn't be there, that I had other plans, that I didn't care enough to show up, that I had once again chosen distance. And the most dangerous part? They believed her. Why wouldn't they? Amanda always sounded so confident, so composed. The perfect daughter, the one who organized the seating chart, remembered the wine, kept her voice light and steady. And me, I'd always been the emotional one, the overreactor, the one who ruined the mood. So when Amanda told them I wasn't coming, they didn't question it. They just adjusted, set one less plate, opened the wine, laughed a little louder. They thought I had ghosted them, but really, Amanda had already made me disappear. The thing about being labeled the dramatic one is that eventually you start documenting everything. Not for revenge, not to expose, but to keep yourself sane. Because when you're constantly told, "That's not what she meant, you're overthinking it, maybe you misunderstood," you stop trusting what you feel and start collecting receipts. I had them. Screenshots, voicemails, old messages from Amanda saying, "Of course you're invited." Even a read receipt from Mom confirming she saw my text 3 days before Christmas. I hadn't meant to save it all, but part of me knew the way you know a storm is coming before the clouds roll in, the way animals get quiet before an earthquake. Amanda's lies weren't random. They were patterns, carefully rehearsed and perfectly timed. Over the years, I'd watched her twist reality in the subtlest ways, erase parts of my story, insert herself where she didn't belong. Tell half-truths with a tone so calm, even I started questioning my own memory. So I'd started keeping evidence, not because I wanted a fight, but because I was tired of losing without proof. That night after Dad called and the truth cracked open, I opened the folder on my phone. I had named it, half-jokingly, Holiday Gaslight Chronicles, and there it all was. Every whisper Amanda tried to bury, preserved, time-stamped, undeniable. She thought I'd walk away again. That I'd cry in my car, wipe my tears, and vanish like I always did. But this time, I wasn't just hurt. I was ready. There's a difference between someone being careless and someone being calculated. Amanda wasn't messy. She wasn't impulsive. She was exact, like a screenwriter who knew every scene, every reaction, every line of fake sincerity. And the worst part? She was good at it. The night she slammed the door in my face, I didn't just stand there in shock. I recorded it. Not because I expected to use it, but because I'd learned by then, if there's no proof, they'll call it exaggeration. If it's not recorded, they'll say you imagined it. So I had my phone in my coat pocket, audio rolling. And after Amanda said it, after she looked me dead in the eye and hissed, "We don't want you here. Go ruin someone else's holiday," She turned her back, muttering to herself, completely unaware that I was still standing there, and that the mic was still live. She said it so casually, like a closing scene in a movie she'd already directed in her head. That should do it. That one line told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't an emotional outburst. This wasn't a moment of anger. It was a script delivered with precision, edited with silence, timed to perfection. Amanda didn't just want me gone. She wanted me erased, and she didn't plan on me hearing that final line. But I did, and I kept it. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can hand a liar is their own words. The driveway looked the same, but I wasn't. This time, I wasn't walking up those steps hoping to be accepted. I wasn't carrying dessert. I wasn't soft. I was solid. I parked the car, took one deep breath, grabbed my phone, not the cranberry tart, and I walked back in. When the door opened, I didn't knock. I didn't wait to be let in. Dad stood there, eyes wide, face red with regret. He opened his arms like he had just found something he thought was gone forever. "I'm so sorry, baby," he whispered. He hugged me like a father hugs a daughter he finally sees. But over his shoulder, there she was, Amanda, frozen, champagne flute in hand, smile cracking, color draining from her face like a sink with the plug pulled. Because I wasn't supposed to come back, and I definitely wasn't supposed to come back with proof. The room shifted. Not loud, not sudden, but real. Forks paused midair. Laughter dulled into silence. The entire table turned slowly, cautiously, to face the one thing Amanda never planned for: me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't scream, "She lied to you." She slammed the door in my face. She planned it all. I didn't need to, because the truth was in my pocket. I pulled out my phone, unlocked it with a swipe, opened the folder I'd named Half in Pain, Half in Sarcasm, Holiday Gaslight Chronicles, and then I hit play. The audio filled the room. "We don't want you here. Go ruin someone else's holiday." Amanda's voice, cold, exact, undeniable. And then the real knife. "That should do it." The words echoed through the air like a courtroom verdict. No one moved. No one breathed. My aunt covered her mouth. My cousin blinked like she forgot how. Even the kids stopped chewing. Amanda stood there frozen in place, the glass in her hand trembling. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, the performance was over, and the audience wasn't clapping. They were watching, staring, finally seeing. The silence in that moment, it wasn't awkward. It was awakening. There's a sound a lie makes when it breaks in front of everyone. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's a crack like glass under pressure, quiet but final. That was the sound in the room after Amanda's voice echoed through the speaker. The silence didn't belong to me anymore. It belonged to her. Amanda looked around, searching for rescue, for someone, anyone to jump in, to defend her, to call it a misunderstanding, to make me the villain again. But no one moved. No one said a word. And then Dad stood up, slowly, like something inside him had just snapped back into place. His face was flushed, his voice thick and shaking when he looked at her and said, "You said that to your sister? You stood at that door and said that to her face?" Amanda stammered. "Dad, I didn't mean—" "No." His voice dropped, cold now, clear. We heard it. We all heard it. He turned, took a breath, then said the 3 words I thought I'd never hear from him. "Get out now." Amanda blinked, stunned, waiting for someone to save her, but no one did. She looked around the room, once hers, once curated, once controlled, and saw nothing but silence. She set the glass down, didn't grab her coat, didn't grab her purse. She walked out with nothing. And the second the door clicked shut behind her, my mom whispered, "Why didn't we see it before?" And I answered, not with bitterness, not with rage, just truth. I think, deep down, you did. Later that night, after Amanda was gone and the room began to breathe again, Mom pulled me aside. She didn't say anything right away, just handed me a photo, creased at the corners, faded around the edges. It was me, 12 years old, holding a certificate with both hands, grinning ear to ear, eyes lit up like fireworks. Behind me, barely in frame, was Amanda, pretending to cry into her sleeve. At the time, I hadn't noticed. I was too proud. Too young to understand that sometimes people cry not because they're moved, but because they're upset the spotlight isn't on them. I looked at the photo for a long time. "She's been doing this since you were a kid," Mom said softly. I nodded. But inside, I was screaming, "Why didn't you stop her? Why did it take this long?" But I didn't say it. Because some truths don't need to be shouted. They just need to sit in the open to finally be seen. We sat at the kitchen table. The rest of the house was quiet. Too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Mom set the photo down and stared at it, not blinking, not moving. Then she said it again. "She's been doing this since you were a kid." Her voice was tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from the day, the kind that comes from years of pretending not to notice. I didn't answer. I let the silence do the talking. After a while, she added, "We thought Amanda was the sensitive one, the emotional one. But now, I don't know." I looked at her. "You thought I was the strong one?" I said. She nodded. "Because you never asked for anything." I took a deep breath. "Maybe that's because I knew no one would give it to me." She flinched, just a little, but it was the first time I'd seen her face change in years. And then she whispered something that I've never forgotten. "We mistook drama for pain, and we mistook your silence for strength." That sentence cracked something open in me. Because it was true. Amanda made noise, so they paid attention. I stayed quiet, so they assumed I was fine. But surviving isn't thriving, and silence is not peace. That night, I sat on the edge of my childhood bed, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, surrounded by walls that once held dreams and now held the truth. I kept thinking about what Mom said. "We mistook your silence for strength." And it hit me. They never admired me for who I was. They admired me for how quietly I could suffer. I wasn't the strong one. I was the convenient one, the one who didn't fight back, the one who let it slide, the one who swallowed hurt and smiled anyway. Because every family has a role, and mine was to be the quiet contrast to Amanda's chaos, to take the hit so she could shine. But silence isn't noble. It's not elegant. It's not a medal you earn. Silence is what happens when speaking never changed anything. When crying just made things worse. When no one ever listened, so you stopped making noise. That night, I wrote a letter to my younger self. It began with, "You were never hard to love," and ended with, "Next year, you set the guest list." It came in the form of an email. No subject line, no greeting, no apology. Just her name in the sender line, Amanda. I stared at it for a while. Part of me didn't want to open it. Another part, the part that spent years chasing her approval, still hoped she might finally say what I always needed to hear. She didn't. The message read, "You think you won, but you don't know what it's like to feel invisible. You've always been the favorite. You just never noticed, because you were too busy pretending to be the victim." That was it. No remorse, no ownership. Just one last attempt to flip the script. Amanda wasn't sorry. She was spinning. Still trying to rewrite the ending. Still trying to cast herself as the misunderstood heroine in the tragedy she created. I read it once, then again. And with each word, I felt lighter, because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to defend myself, to explain, to fix her narrative. I knew the truth, and so did everyone else. Amanda had one last gaslight to throw, but it didn't catch, not this time. I stared at the screen, not angry, not even hurt anymore. Just done. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to prove anything. For the first time in my life, Amanda's words didn't send me into doubt. They didn't rattle me. They didn't make me feel small. They made me feel free. So I opened a reply, typed slowly, carefully, like I was writing a boundary, not a rebuttal. And I wrote, "I used to want your love. Then I wanted your apology. Now I don't need either. I don't need to win. I just needed to stop losing myself every time you needed to feel big. You can stay gone. I'll stay whole." Then I hit send. Not with satisfaction, not with rage, but with relief. And right after I clicked block, not out of spite, not to be dramatic, just to end the loop, to stop the noise, to close the door finally, without waiting for someone to open it from the other side. Because sometimes healing doesn't look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like a clean inbox and a lighter chest. There was no drama, no sobbing, no final explosion. Just a click, one small motion, one final act, block, and suddenly the war ended. Not with fire, not with revenge, but with silence. The good kind, the kind that doesn't echo with regret, the kind that feels like finally walking out of a room you were never welcome in. For years, Amanda's presence in my life had been a storm, unpredictable, loud, draining. But her absence, it was like still water, like clean air after a thunderclap. She used to take up so much space in my thoughts, so much energy, so much noise. And with one click, it all went quiet. Not empty, peaceful. No more checking for messages that never came. No more wondering if I should have said something differently. No more shrinking myself to keep someone else comfortable. Just stillness and space to breathe. That's the thing about survival. It doesn't always end in applause. Sometimes it ends with a quiet click and the first deep breath you've taken in years. There were no fireworks, no big speeches, no confessions over champagne. Just a table, simple food, real laughter, and peace. It was the first time in years I had a New Year's dinner that didn't feel like a performance. No walking on eggshells, no pretending everything was fine while holding my breath. Everyone brought something to share. My dad brought apple cider instead of wine, said he wanted clarity, not numbness. My mom made her famous garlic potatoes. Even my brother, usually glued to his phone, stayed present the entire evening. We talked about work, movies, plans for spring. But not once, not even once, did anyone say her name. And no one needed to. Her absence was loud enough. But for the first time, that silence didn't sting. It felt like a wound finally closing. Like the air had shifted. I looked around the room and realized we weren't celebrating the new year. We were celebrating the end of an era. He stood up slowly, not with a speech in hand, not with practiced words, just a glass of cider and a tremble in his voice. My father, the man who had sat silently through so many dinners, who had smiled when things were breaking, who had said, "That's just how family is," when I needed him to say, "This isn't okay." He looked around the room, eyes soft, voice steady. To the daughter who taught us boundaries. The room quieted. Even the sound of forks faded. I used to think staying silent was strength, but it wasn't. It was surrender. He turned toward me. "You showed me that love without respect isn't love at all, and that sometimes the strongest thing a family can do is stop pretending." He raised his glass. To Samantha, the daughter we should have protected. But the one who protected herself, and in doing so, taught the rest of us how to grow up. We clinked glasses. No one cried. Not because there wasn't emotion, but because the words were finally enough. I used to think home was about being invited, a chair pulled out, a place at the table, a text that said, "You coming?" But I've learned home is not who invites you, it's who sees you. That night, no one said, "We're so glad you made it." They didn't have to. Because for the first time, they asked about my work and actually listened. They laughed at my jokes, not out of politeness, but because they finally got me. No backhanded compliments, no careful tiptoeing, just warmth, and something more powerful than any apology: belonging. I used to wait for people to make space for me. Now I build my own damn table and fill the chairs with those who see me, not just tolerate me. That night wasn't perfect, but it was real. And it was mine. It wasn't dramatic. There was no music swelling, no movie ending. Just me on the porch, barefoot, hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee. The sun was soft that morning, the kind of soft that doesn't ask for attention, but offers comfort if you slow down enough to notice. And for once, I wasn't waiting for a text. I wasn't rehearsing a comeback. I wasn't hoping someone would finally get it. I was just there. No more being the outsider in my own story. No more performing grief for an audience that never cared. No more, "I hope they change." Just peace, and the choice to protect it. That morning, I didn't feel powerful. I felt free. Amanda moved to another city. New job, new people, new stories. I heard through someone else that she's telling them her version, that I'm unstable, that I ruined Christmas, that she's the victim of a jealous little sister. But the thing is, I don't care anymore. I don't stalk her socials. I don't defend myself in group texts. I don't scroll through old messages trying to find where it all went wrong. Because I've realized something. She can't rewrite me anymore. Let her write whatever story she needs to. I'm no longer in it. I'm no longer the character she manipulates for sympathy. I'm the author now. And my story, it's not about revenge. It's about release. To anyone standing outside a locked door, holding the pie you made, the gift you wrapped, the hope you still carry, let me tell you something they'll never say. You're not dramatic. You're not difficult. You're just finally refusing to be erased. You were never too much. You were never the problem. You were just the truth, and they weren't ready to face it. So if you're standing out in the cold, not because you did something wrong, but because you stopped apologizing for who you are, come closer. Not to them, but to yourself. You don't have to knock anymore. You get to build the door, and this time it opens from the inside. Life doesn't always give you justice. Sometimes you have to claim it. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most share your last name. But healing doesn't require their apology. It starts when you stop asking for permission to exist. You don't have to keep proving your worth to those who refuse to see it. You're not a guest in your own life. You're the host. So take back your seat and build a table that welcomes truth, not control. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own silence or the strength it took to speak, don't just scroll. Subscribe to Whispers of Life, because here, your truth matters, and your voice, it's always welcome.